So I just finished doing a quick review of the new trailer for Oddworld Soulstorm, but already more information, theories, and perspectives are coming to light with the help of Neiman, an Oddworld enthusiast. If you want to check out his website for yourself, which is chock full of new and old and tasty information on Oddworld, I'll leave a link below. So without further ado, I want to jump straight back into the deep, dark depths of this trailer and see what else we can uncover. Now this video is going to be slightly longer than the first one I did because there is a lot of information to unpack. So sit down, shut up, and get your detective hats on. What is going on, everyone? My name is Insomniac and welcome back to another Late Nights with an Insomniac, the series where I discuss some gaming news and anything associated. Okay, so first things first, let's start back at the beginning, shall we, where we see Abe unravel that pretty stone thing. Except ignore that for a moment and look at the cloth instead. I completely overlooked it, but that is definitely the new map of the surrounding area to which Abe's story revolves. Both past, present, and alternate future with Exodus and Munchie's Odyssey can be seen on this map. This is such a neat little detail and I'm honestly disappointed in myself that I missed it the first time. But this does excitedly bring me to the focal point of why I brought up the map. Last year in June, Lord Lanning sat down with VentureBeat in an interview to confirm the first part of the story for Soulstorm, and in the following quote confirmed some of the following locations. We start off in the hideout with some more native environments. You escape that towering inferno. Then we go into old abandoned towns that are a little more like Stranger. These are mill towns and mining towns. We have ancient ruins, pretty spooky looking areas. We wind up at gas stations for trains, big fuel depots. Then we go to a slick barracks and the Necro mines. Okay, so straight away we know we start in Monzag Lines, which gets burnt down. You know, no big deal, that's been a thing for a while now, whatevs. From there, we head to the Gorge, then we go through the Star Valley, into the Fat Station, to the Slick Barracks, and then Necro. From here, it gets interesting, as just like in Exodus, we arrive at Comet Depot, and from here, we can travel to 5 locations in any order as confirmed by this quote derived from a review by PC Gamer. Most of the game will be linear, but eventually you'll reach a giant train hub, at which point you'll be able to choose from 5 locations to guide Abe in any order. So from here, the theory is that you'll travel to Boneworks, Magog Motors, Splinters, Flub Fuels in any given order you see fit, and the final destination being the brewery itself. Another thing to notice is the additional areas like the Big Well, the Vaults, Raisin Cave, the Windmill, and the Spruce Shrub Forest. Try to say that 5 times. Spruce Shrub Forest, Spruce Shrub Forest, Spruce Shrub Forest. Yeah, no, I can't do it. What is odd is that most of these potential places that we get to visit in Soulstorm are from Munchie's Odyssey, but now they're being used in the retelling of Abe's story, the second installment of the new Oddworld quintology. It may just be that Oddworld is moving away from the old quintology that included 4 other characters, the main focus of these protagonists for this video being Munch. It appears Soulstorm is a combination of elevating and expanding the story of Abe's Exodus and is also a remedy to the failure of Munch's Odyssey. So in saying that, no big plan for a Munch redo. Now, I don't believe Abe will go to the Vaults, but it is possible that he will go to Raisin Cave. Lorne is a mighty fan of the almighty Raisin, and Abe might even stop off at the Big Well too. Perhaps Abe gets knocked off a train by Sligmummer into the Spruce Shrub Forest, finds the Raisin and uses the Big Well to launch himself onto another train heading towards Magog Motors. Also important to mention here is that there will be 20 plus levels in the game, and if you subtract Paramonia, Scrab 80 and Rupture Farms, we have 18 areas on the map. I personally believe we won't be returning to the previously mentioned areas as there is no need to. What I do believe, however, is that the additional 2+ levels will take place on the train rides between main locations, which ties into the cool little idea that Abe gets blown off one of the trains by Sligmummer, and the scene here might be the start of a level itself as well. Fun fact, in Munchie's Odyssey, the windmill was actually used as a miniature Soulstorm brewery plant, and Abe and Munch went in there and completely wrecked it, of course, and there is a very high probability that the windmill is going to be used for the exact same reason in Soulstorm. And if we look at this in-game footage of what I assume is Abe leaving a train station on a blimp, we might even get a sky related level. I could also talk about the tracks leading off the map which could possibly tie into the game, but that would really be stabbing around in the dark and I don't want to dirty the water too much with more ideological ramblings. There is honestly so much to unpack and theorize with just this map alone, but with it we can weave other information together to create possible fuller timelines, making it a vital piece in unraveling the truth, which is exciting stuff. Now I want to bring before you at Lady Margaret's request, the Baron, who I originally believe retcons one of the main 3 Gluckons from Exodus, but then later found out he's his own character. I assume he is the head of the Diggers Guild and the Necromining Co. This Gluckon is hanging out in the scene, kind of like he's foreshadowing something. What purpose does this ugly mug have being in the frame situated alongside the reveling muds by the fire? Oh, I don't know. Maybe a certain trailer comes to mind in which what seems to be the Mosaic lines being ransacked and chaos and destruction ensuing following the idea that in Soulstorm, the Baron finds one of the last safe havens for the Mudokons and destroys it, forcing our hero to flee. It makes sense seeing the juxtaposition of the Baron and the Mudokons happy, safe, and sound around fire. However, a theory fetched from Neiman suggests that Mosaic lines being destroyed is completely by accident.
What?
Okay, so hear me out. So the brew is incredibly flammable, right? Like it's made very clear how flammable this crap is. And here we have some muds having a good old time near fire. Now the beverage isn't alcoholic, but in high amounts it can make you very loopy. And we all know Mudokons can be very clumsy at the best of times, which just adds to their charm really. But we see them do some clinkies, a bottle rolls away, we might get some potential spill, and the next thing you know, one of the last non-forgotten temples of your enslaved race is torched to the ground. So, where does this leave the Baron? Maybe he's just covering up something else Oddworld Inhabitants doesn't want us to see yet, or maybe he just looks cool there. It also doesn't really make sense that the Baron, the guy in charge of Necrom, finds the Mosaic lines. I don't know how that would fit into the story per se, so it seems a little bit more believable at this point that it is accidental, rather than this guy being a foreshadowing of some disaster inflicted by the Gluckons. Another very important reason as to why the Baron hunting down the Mudokons to the Mosaic lines and burning it to the ground doesn't exactly work is because in the original storyline, after Rupture Farms is destroyed, Malik survives and he goes back to the Magog cartel and he tells them, hey, this guy Abe is starting this revolution, he's rising up, he destroyed the factory. And the Magog cartel, the other Gluckons, they don't believe him. So it doesn't really add up because they wouldn't go looking for them. It's more believable to the Gluckons that Malik burnt Rupture Farms down to the ground himself, possibly even hurt himself to make it look more believable just so he could get the insurance money. Because at this point it's well known and established that Rupture Farms isn't doing well due to the lack of scrabs and paramites, and also the extinction of Munch's species. But what we can decipher with ease is whether or not Abe is going to remove his stitches, which is a very important thing and has a lot of people super hyped. And I'm just gonna cut right to the chase and say, yeah, nah bruh, he don't So we have the scene where Abe is with Big Face. I assume it's Big Face, I don't know. I know it's not the same Big Face, but he does have a mask on and, you know, the mask does make his face look bigger, so maybe he just looks a little different. Anyway, I'm going to refer to him as Big Face. Convinces Abe to remove the stitches, and Abe is about to cut the thick, leathery hide strips. Ow? Abe? Please, man. Use some scissors, okay? And how do I know this? Well, couple it with the first trailer, and hey, it all seems to add up. Little side note, the beaded doorway is the same, which indicates a transition between these two scenes. Anyway, we can also tell Abe doesn't get his tat till later, because the stitches are still on when he's getting the tat in this scene here. Which also means Abe decides to keep the stitches in. As cool as it would be to see Abe remove them, there is just too much character and meaning sewn into these stitches. In a letter to Alf, Alf has said that Abe says the stitches are both a reminder and a badge of honor. Comparatively, Lorne Lanning has said in the past, empathy, in the beginning, is what led to him getting these stitches in the first place. They were put there to save his life. So the stitches are at the heart of Abe. So Big Face convinces Abe to do it. Once that gets destroyed, Abe gets interrupted, and from then on he decides to keep the stitches as a reminder of where he comes from and what he's been through. It's also a huge staple of his character, so to speak. Abe is Stitch Lips, and while he would be more freely able to talk, he just wouldn't be Abe without him. Okay, so now I want to move on to some real juicy stuff, starting with our new blind shaman character, the Honey Shaman, as I've taken to calling them.
For the fate of your entire people is up to you.
And one thing I just want to clarify real quick, because this is important later, is that mudokons are asexual, and while mudokons are often referred to as he and him, really they are genderless, and don't have sexual reproductive organs. So the curveball here for a few people was the feminine qualities the shaman possesses. The voice, assuming the narrator is also the honey shaman, and the physicality of the shaman seems very feminine. But rather than this mud being female, it's more likely that the mudokons can be somewhat androgynous in nature, meaning they can both have the characteristics of two genders. I didn't discuss it last time and glanced over the honey shaman as I assumed it was just an oddball mudokon, because even though there is no gender in the mudokon species, they do tend to have more masculine features. I just really find this mudokon so fascinating. This one mudokon is just opening up all these wonderful questions and it's incredible, and I just really like seeing more diversity in the mudokons, especially now that there's the capability within the engine and the technology that Oddworld Inhabitants is using to do so. Now, the main reason I bring the honey shaman up again is because there's a lot of potential evidence that leads to the birds and the bees theory, which Lorne may have adopted into the lore of the mudokons. So, we do know that birds are like the great ancestors of mudokons twice removed or whatever, but now I'm thinking Lorne decided to spice it up a bit and add bees into the mix. Playing on that story, our parents taught us about the birds and the bees. Yeah, so this opens up a sticky pot of honey, but I promise it makes sense, especially when we learn more about bees and discover something called morphology. This crazy thing happens IRL, and I'm going to try to do my best real quickly to sum it up. Honeybees can secrete this stuff called royal jelly. Hey, hold that thought. And it is used in the nutrition of larvae, as well as adult queens. And it is fed to all larvae within the hive, regardless of sex or caste, which means their class, really. So when a hive is creating new queens, worker bees construct special bedrooms called cells for the future queens. The larvae in these cells are then fed copious amounts of royal jelly, which then triggers the queen morphology, the process of developing the parts essential to being a queen, so parts like ovaries needed to lay eggs start forming. Now there is a little bit more I could go into about bee diets, but we just don't need to for this video, so I'm gonna just, yeah. The crazy cool thing about all this, however, is that we've seen royal jelly in the past. It's one of the collectibles that increases Abe's overall health in game. So what does this all mean? This means it's totally possible to have mudokons potentially take on more of a hive queen-like role by consuming royal jelly that a certain worker bee collects. Hopefully, Oddworld Inhabitants don't try to replace Sam, but I wouldn't be surprised if Abe and co break in and try to free her, but only discover she's totally adapted and happy with her situation and finds it too much and too difficult to leave. So in the end, the mudokons abandon her, and they resort to finding and creating a new queen. Hence all the bee imagery, like the hexagons on the honey shaman and the tattoos retreating into their hairline and on their arms and shoulders as well. You've also got the hat, the glitch effects in the first trailer, the wall in the background of the hive and the general color scheme, the honey pool, what could be mudokon eggs and cells, and the flowers denoting mudokon locations on the new map. Also the character trait similarities between bees and mud scrubs. Oh, and bees themselves that appear to be everywhere, which I'll tackle in a sec, but I just want to throw in quickly that it is also possible that the bee theory may only apply or take precedence in select tribes of mudokons, as there are varying differences amongst tribes. Take for example the mudokons, the guys down south who have a passion for fashion and partying. So we can get variety in different tribes and they can kind of focus on different cultural aspects that they decide to take on and adapt. Okay, so the bees themselves, yeah? In the hive where Abe gets the healing scar tattoo, there are what appear to be, well, bees. Or maybe they're fireflies. Which is strange, but also kind of makes sense because some fireflies live underground and they also like pollen and nectar, same as bees, but sometimes turn to cannibalism. Sort of like the mudokons at the moment, eh? I'm sure that it's just a one-off. It kind of makes sense that they're there, you know, it could just be a hangout for the fireflies as well. Anyway, it's not just dust or particle effects flying around, which is really fine detail. Like seriously, look at that. Amazing stuff. Neiman pointed this out to me, but there are also beehives around Mosaic Lines too in Odyssey. So while I don't believe this potential lore was always hinted at and the birds and the bees did in fact do the naked naked dance, it sure is an odd coincidence. The bees in Mosaic Lines were probably only added in to get more use out of them being an obstacle in the game to create some variety and challenges. This would also imply that Elam, one of Abe's travel companions, likes to eat Abe's ancestors' vomit. Moving on, Neiman also theorized that the beehive area where the honey shaman resides in is deep within Necrum, and this dude was bringing the stone to the honey shaman before dying. Neiman also found that Abe doesn't have the stone in his possession at the start of the scene, but after the scrub dies, Abe has the stone in his pack. The stone could also be some sort of amber encasing something else, or maybe even a special form of royal jelly. When this mudokon dies, he gives it to Abe, and from there Abe takes responsibility for it and subsequently gains the healing power. Sorta explains why the shaman chokes Abe, because they were expecting someone else and doesn't recognize Abe audibly and or spiritually. Whatever it is, this mudokon found it in Necrum and tried to keep it safe, and at some point dies trying to protect it. Now, just before I mentioned a possible location for the honey shaman and her nest, and that is Necrum, which doesn't make a lot of sense at first. Originally, I thought maybe the shaman was located near one of the other Mudokon sites, like near the Big Well for example, or even near the Mudanchi and Mudomu vaults. It would have been cool to pay homage to the weirdos who originally gave Abe his healing power by having the shaman set up shop nearby. I haven't seen the weirdos at all, so I'm assuming they were retconned by the shaman, hence the cool possible reference to them. The Big Well kinda made sense for a bit because the honey shaman kicks Abe down what I thought was an odd looking well. Obviously I don't mean that this is the Big Well, but I thought maybe it is a well of some significant size. And it would have been a hilarious reference to that time Alf pushes Abe into the actual Big Well.
Okay, here goes.
Whoa, that's too high for me.
But no. These theories have multiple flaws, the big red flag being that they are well out of the way in terms of story and getting there, but there is one theory that trumps them all. So if we turn our eyes back to the gorgeous map, what do we see? That's right, the exact same tattoo that is zapped into Abe's chest that bears him the power to heal his ailing brothers. And it's right next to Necrum. Coincidence? I think not. And if we look at the still image of Necrum, we can see this weird birdstone statue. Seems pretty significant to me. And if we look at this image, which Neiman pointed out to me, what do we have in the corner? Ah, the same thing. Yep, I'm totally on board with this theory that the shaman lives deep within Necrum and also lives in a beehive themed crib. Pretty cool, right? Okay, so I think I've just about covered everything to do with the honey shaman. So, let's focus on this sad sack for a bit, yeah? So some people are theorizing that the Mudokon is Toby. I don't think so, as there are some key physical features that disprove this, and while they may look similar and it would be some crazy depth building for Abe to lose one of his traveling companions, I do not believe this to be Toby. I'm also pretty sure Toby was built as kind of like a comedic relief in a very dark and depressing world, so it doesn't really make sense that they kill him off. Also, I would like to scratch my fun little theory that this dude was murdered by vengeful spirits, as there is evidence leading elsewhere. It was discovered a while ago, Mudokons can die within 48 hours from withdrawals of the energy drink SOULSTORM brew. In fact, the brew was specifically made to be addictive and cause cardiac arrest after 2 days due to a lack of consumption, which is extremely messed up and insane to think about. But not unlike the Gluckons and Vikers. So this guy, quite simply, might be suffering from not only exhaustion, but also withdrawals. This mud scrub may have been hooked on the brew and went too long without getting any more. The shadows under his eyes also denote lack of sleep, which, hey, check it out. Insomnia is a symptom too. I'm totally expecting that this mud is going to cough a lot, gets dizzy, hallucinates, has chest pain, maybe even hitting a low cave ceiling, and even passes out once or twice before he actually dies. Like, I reckon Oddworld Inhabitants is going to make this scene really, really sad. So, to wrap up, we have an exhausted, sleep-deprived, overworked, cannibalistic energy drink addict who is being led out of the mines or towards the honey shaman, and was so close. But, unbeknownst to Abe, disaster's about to strike this poor mud, and Abe can't do anything but sit by and watch. As Abe clearly doesn't have the healing scar, it's possible that Abe might not know what's causing this to happen, which is even worse when you think about it. And because of this, Abe was absolutely useless as he loses yet another brother to the brew. Now, I have 2 things left I want to quickly talk about. First things first, and that is the new creature and my Ndombi theory. Yeah, that was fun, but probably not at all correct. Though it is possible that this new wildlife creature could be what's lurking around in the cave doing this and making this noise. it still doesn't seem that scary, nor does it make a paramite look like a puppy. So perhaps that's not what Lorne was referring to, or maybe we just haven't seen what it's capable of yet. Or maybe they're just rats. Spelled with a Z, just FYI. But above all this, what it probably isn't is a slightly darker coloured, more physical appearing spirit orb dancing around the neck room. Now the last thing I wanted to mention was the giant elephant in the room, or in this case the robot on the train. In the previous video I said I hadn't seen much discussion about the Slig Mama, appropriate name for the nod towards the Slig's cannibalistic mum Skillia, but turns out I was just late to the fat station and missed that hype train. Oh well. I hope you all enjoyed this further analysis and deep dive into the fun possibilities this trailer has brought forth, and I also want to say thank you so much for all the wonderful support on that last video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. What do you guys think of this total bombardment of information, huh? I want to know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks again, and I hope you all have a good day and a good night. I can't wait to see you again in the next late night with an Insomniac. Until then, bye bye.